All right, good morning, Doug. We, right before this started, we're talking about a whole bunch of different topics, and we just had to abruptly end it. I had to abruptly end it so we could try and have that conversation live, or at least for our followers here. So a whole bunch of news items of interest. And I guess maybe we should start with the one we were just wrapping up on, which is the person who was about banking. We talked just a couple of weeks ago about how the banks are, engaging in for the benefit of the state. And we saw this with the Canadian truckers, clearly happened there, but it's spreading. Nigel Farage, I think, was the most recent one that you commented on, but there's more. It seems to be happening more and more. What's the most recent one that we saw, or you saw?
Yeah, this is rather amazing that was it Citibank or was it Chase? Doesn't matter. These big banks are all one and the same. They're all arms of the state, in other words, with a revolving door with their executives between government and the corporations and so forth. But anyway, so because they've closed down Dr. Joseph Mercola's bank account at one of these big banks because, well, I don't think that they don't have to say because. It's not because we don't like you or because anything. They have a perfect right to close down somebody's account. And most libertarians, they're smarter than the average person, but not very bright. They say, well, it's a private company. They have a right to close down the guy's account. Well, yes, they do, except they're all acting in concert and they're all being directed basically by their hidden masters in the state.
And it even extends from Mercola, if I recall, it even extends beyond his accounts or his business accounts.
It goes to his associates, people that are closely associated with them. And listen, everybody that's out there has to ask themselves, how inconvenienced would I be if my bank account closed? How am I going to deposit checks? How am I going to pay bills? I mean, in today's world, it's a real problem where everything is digital and you can forget about paying your bills with cash. Nobody's got any cash. You're not going to be able to use an ATM, even buy a hamburger. I mean, this is really serious. And this is, one of the many ways they're, making sure that people don't do things or say things or even think things that run counter to the state narrative.
Right, and it seems like it extends so far. They go. There's a targeted person, which we presume is Mercola, but that his CEO was informed that, or he lost his account. The CFO lost their accounts. Their spouses lost their accounts. And he says that his CEO was informed that his younger children also will never be allowed to bank with Chase in the future. So it's like wiping out your lineage can no longer bank with us.
Yeah, it's like creating a class of untouchables like they have in India, where these people are so far on the bottom that they can't get up. And it's going to make it very hard. And incidentally, on Nigel Farage in England, I understand that Coots had to recant their, but that's only because Farage is a really major political character and he's a fighter and he raised hell. And because the British, more than the Americans, probably more than anybody, have a kind of a sense of fair play. Say, this just isn't right. But here in the US, nobody knows really about Mercola except for, a small subsection of people. Won't have any effect. And, the average American, whether they're Republican or Democrat, will think, hey, he must have had it coming. And anyway, it's a private bank.
Exactly. So, the private bank argument, I think, is it's so deep-seated in most people of goodwill in the US. They just think, well, they should be able to do what they want. But you're presuming that it'll be easy for him to go to another bank and open accounts, that they'll be able to go into, well, they won't be blacklisted at Wells Fargo or at Citibank or whatever else.
Yeah, but no other bank is going to want to open an account for them. They can see that we're just asking for trouble. and they don't want trouble.
Right.
So
Exactly. And
I just hope it doesn't happen to you or I, because it would be inconvenient, and much more inconvenient for me, because I still idiotically perhaps have a presence in the US still, and you largely don't. So
wait, so you're saying you just hopefully it doesn't happen to either one of us, but if it does happen to one of us, hopefully it happens to me. Is that what you're saying?
no, it'll happen. It's more likely to happen to me than to you.
I know it is.
And since I'm the one that has a presence in the US, it'll be much more inconvenient for me if it does happen. But if it happens to me, it's going to happen to you.
No doubt. No doubt about it. And it's an everywhere kind of thing. This seems to be happening. You know, we see it in the UK, we see it in the US, we saw it in Canada. We saw it, there was a story, I can't recall the specifics over the top of my head, but there was some minister in Germany who, some influencer in Germany made fun of this minister, called her, fat or something like that, and his accounts were closed. So it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it really is everywhere. You've got to be very careful what you say in general, even down to calling a fat government minister fat. I mean, can't do that. No, this is very serious. We already live in a kinder and gentler, but nonetheless, a police state. I mean, a police state with a high standard of living, so people don't mind it too much, because they can still get their McDonald's and still watch their HTV, stuff like that. But it's evolving into a police state, kinder and gentler though. It's very smart. Part of
the stuff about going after associates is really interesting to me, though, because it just reminds me of Gulag Archipelago, where some of the state would target somebody and then arrest someone in the middle of the night or whatever, but then all of their associates would be condemned along with them. They'd be socially ostracized by everyone else because they'd worry that it would somehow infect them. It has a really unsettling quality on everything if associates are targeted being accused.
It really does. It's going to have a tendency to, don't have to explain this. This is so, it's subtle, but it's so pernicious, so dangerous. And it's happening right before our eyes, and nobody gives a damn about it. So not yet. So
I was happy to see that Bobby Kennedy tweeted about the Mercola situation.
Oh, did he?
Yes. And that really, I was really surprised, because Mercola is a fringe,
Fringe character,
alternative medicine actor. He's always been out there. He's been certainly kicked off of all kinds of social media. So, but for Bobby to come out and defend him, I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, notwithstanding the problems with Bobby, which we've discussed in the past, and the fact that he's still swimming in the Democratic Party cesspool, still, he's doing so many things that are laudable. Like, for instance, he was on the Hannity show. Now, I would never watch Hannity, because Hannity is a stupid blowhard. He really is.
Is it the CIA lapel pin he wears that bothers you?
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't bother me at all. The fact that he's almost like a paid mouthpiece of the Republican Party that doesn't think, doesn't read a book, and he's actually stupid. And we'll have a conversation on the meaning of the word stupid, which is overused, but I think we ought to look at it in detail. What actually is stupid, and define that. But one definition of stupid is he doesn't see the indirect and delayed consequences. He's just a mouthpiece, happy about hauling down $10 million a year or whatever he gets, and being famous for being a blowhard. And I can't bring myself to watch Hannity. It's just too infuriating. But anyway, one good thing about Hannity is he invited Bobby Kennedy on. And of course, Bobby Kennedy ate his lunch politely, in a very gentlemanly manner, not trying to alienate the blowhard. So Kennedy did quite well on Hannity. And it speaks well of Hannity that he did invite Kennedy on.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Was there anything in particular that he, because I haven't seen that yet, because like you, I avoid Hannity, but is there anything that stands out in particular?
No, nothing in particular. It's just that Bobby, made his points, didn't back down, was a gentleman. And so he conducted himself very well. And increasingly, I think he's sincere about the things that he says, not just another liar, but they say whatever they say and then they back down on it. Well,
Yeah, he
like
really
that fool
thrives in,
Zelensky that runs the Ukraine, who, was elected on a peace platform. And, then he dresses up in his military faux olive green camis to promote the war. Totally different kind of character.
definitely different. Well, and one of the things that stands out to me, I guess, about Bobby, it seems like he really thrives under this adversarial communication. You know what I mean? Like you see the best of him when he has actually a less sympathetic interviewer, because he's willing to take a stance that other people will not with like that. They won't have the conversation even.
Yeah, regardless of how the problems he has with some of his views, he has a backbone and real moral courage. But you mentioned something when we were talking before about his Secret Service protection. What's that story?
Yeah, I'll read this tweet from him earlier today. This was earlier this morning. He says, since the assassination of my father in 1968, candidates for president are provided Secret Service protection, but not me. Typical turnaround time for a pro forma protection request from presidential candidates is 14 days. After 88 days of no response and after several follow-ups from our campaign, the Biden administration just denied our request. Secretary Mayorkas, quote, I have determined that Secret Service protection for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not warranted at this time, unquote. And then he says, our campaign request included a 67-page report from the world's leading protection firm detailing unique and well-established security and safety risks aside from commonplace death threats.
That is shocking. So the affirmative action appointee, Mayorkas, another worthless person on the denies that. Of all the people that are running today, I mean, first of all, Kennedy in all the polls is favored by more people than any other candidate, including Trump or Biden or any of the other possible candidates. The Americans in polls say that he's least objectionable, most favorable. So yes, he's a serious candidate. And the fact that he's, quite obviously, because he's so outspoken and controversial, and because of his family history, he's the one that's most likely to be assassinated. And they're denying him. This is absolutely shocking. These people are so bold and so disgusting and so evil. It's just amazing to me.
It just goes back to the Jacobins issue you've mentioned for years. Once they get in control, they will, you cannot unseat them. And I just think these are the kinds of bureaucratic examples. They retain power like this.
And these Democrats now, and this is just another example, we brought up a couple here just in this conversation. Now that they have the control of the apparatus of the state, they are not going to give it up one way or another in 2024. So we're really rigging for hurricane-style heavy weather for the rest of this decade.
We didn't even mention the fact that that Trump was there was an additional 4 charges that the DOJ hit him with yesterday. There's and more coming. This is like page 6 for paid news, and it doesn't even matter at this point.
Yeah.
But it's happening still.
No, they're going to throw all this shit up against the wall and hope that some of it sticks because there's going to be a judge that hates Trump, or because it's tried in Manhattan or Washington, D.C. or whatever venue they'll get it, where all of the jurors are going to be rabid anti-Trumpers. So yeah, this is a completely dishonest, actually criminal tactic that they're using.
Well, and that, and that's, we talked a little bit earlier about how libertarians think about the banking situation. I don't know if you saw Rand Paul yesterday, saying that we shouldn't, there's McCarthy's talking about impeaching Biden. Now, the political circus of all that is just a political circus, we know. But
it's not going to happen anyway, because even if the House let me see if I remember the way this charade works. The House has to impeach him, but the Senate has to try him. Is that the way it works?
Yep. And then he can, he has to be convicted before what happens. It's not even clear.
And the Senate's got to convict him with a 2/3 majority, I think. So this is all a charade. It's nice they're going through the charade from that point of view, but it's just a charade. It's kabuki theater.
It is, but I don't know if you saw Rand Paul's statement about it. He was basically arguing, he was taking the principled, stance about, the way the rules should work, and that this shouldn't be, you can't, this is it's just political theater. It's not going to change anything anyway. And he's basically making the high-minded argument about it. But it's like he doesn't realize what has happened. He doesn't realize that everyone is ignoring the rules anyway, that, the laws and policies and even just traditions are all imperiled, if not gone already. And he's taking a principled stance, which I respect the principled stance, but it's almost like, he's pissing in the wind, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Rand Paul is not Ron Paul. He's like Ron Paul light. But that's like being Bud Light. I mean, so no, maybe he's the best guy in the Senate, but it's not saying very much today, I'm afraid.
No, it really isn't. I mean, I don't know if you saw the thing with Dianne Feinstein. There was a vote on the floor of the Senate, and she's so feeble and losing her mind, not with it anymore. I mean, she's having a hard time. I mean, it's like elder abuse, but they pull her out there, and so her aide says, just vote or just say yay. Because she's confused about what's happening.
How do these people get elected? What's going on in the minds of these stupid people that vote and actually vote for? They don't know what they're doing. This is well, like Winston Churchill said, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter, or perhaps it's just looking at the kind of creatures that they elect is the best argument against democracy, so-called.
Exactly. It's a disaster. It's just a terrible disaster. So there were a couple of other really more page 6 type news, actually, that you mentioned. One having to do with Bronny James and Kevin Spacey also. What do you want to bring up around those?
Well, Bronny James, LeBron James' son, an 18-year-old star basketball player, is out of the hospital. But so I read the article on him, and it was like a pretty long article in the Wall Street Journal, or someplace like the Wall Street Journal, blah, 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 about. And they say, well, what is an 18-year-old athlete doing with a heart attack in the hospital? Could it possibly have anything to do with the fact that he's fully vaxxed? I mean, that's not even mentioned as a possibility. Did the doctors even dare to discuss that as a possibility of how an 18-year-old athlete winds up in the hospital with a heart attack? No, of course not. That would be too politically incorrect, and actually too dangerous for them to lose their licenses or to be canceled. So I wish
even still, once the conversation is opened up so much around all of this, even still, you can't even mention it as a possibility.
No, you can't. No, you can't. So, he's the son of a mega millionaire, but he's not getting the best medical care available because they're not acknowledging a possible, in fact, likely problem. Anyway, Not
It's not
much.
just him. I saw there was a singer who was 30 years old who had a whole bunch of blood clots apparently. As
That's
well.
right. She's, what was her name?
Tracy something?
Yeah, but she's won 2 Grammys. She's 30 years old, very popular. And I don't know what's happened to her, but young people, it's very, very rare for them to have serious heart events. And there's been a whole spate of them. So we'll see what happens. I mean, somebody sent me an article the other day about how the Deagle report, which we wrote up 2 years ago, maybe, building momentum with all these people dying. So who knows? I don't have a clue.
No. No, who knows? Yeah, I don't, we talked about it before. I don't think that's credible, but I don't think the deal thing is credible, but I do
No,
think.
I don't think it's credible either. Although it's fun that it came out before all this stuff was happening. So who knows? I mean, maybe it was one girl tells another, and they decided to write it up and then said, we better not talk about this after all. And who knows?
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny.
And the other thing that I thought was interesting was that this is last week already, but we didn't mention it, is that Kevin Spacey has been, I don't know what the nature of the legal proceeding against him was in England exactly, but the 4 men that accused him of sexual molestation, Kevin Spacey has been found recused or found not guilty or whatever. So he's gotten off. And what shocks me is that 4 separate men would say, oh, he touched me. Kevin, if some raging faggot touches you in the back of the car, you can tell him, take your hand off of me. And if he doesn't, just smack him in the mouth. This isn't a cause for a court case. I mean, who are these idiots that they're suing Kevin Spacey in court because he's, an affirmative gay or whatever it is? This should have stayed in the back of the car, but they sued him. And I'm glad, Kevin. What kind of poofters are these guys? I mean, they're the real the girly boys. If they feel that they have to bring suit because Kevin approached them sexually. I mean, what kind of people are these? Further sign that the whole civilization is degraded.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the idea that you need to go to the courts in order to try and get remedy for a man assaulting a man, like that. It seems shocking to me because you man should just draw boundaries, stand up for yourself. You don't need to, maybe it's a money grab though. Maybe they're just going after money. I don't know.
Maybe they just went for the money. That's true. But I can imagine what would have happened if Kevin Spacey had sexually assaulted John Wayne, for instance. He wouldn't have worked out the same way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe this is just in an effort to kind of, equalize the sexes again, because obviously, women are sexually assaulted and they seek redress in the court system. And so if women are really equal to men, then, the men should be, seeking redress there as well. Maybe it's an effort to equalize those things.
I guess, and in order to make them further equal, I guess the men have to turn into little girly men, as Arnold used to say.
Exactly.
Say that anymore.
I mean, it is amazing though. It's shocking. All right. Well, I think that's probably good for today, Doug. Those are very entertaining. And we'll be back next week. We'll talk about stupidity because that needs further exploration. I think we don't understand how big of a problem it actually is in the world today.
It's one of the reigning conditions in the world today is institutionalized stupidity. And everybody uses the word, but they don't define it and don't really know what stupidity is and what it means. So we'll try to cover that. That's a good idea.
All right. All right. Doug, have a great weekend.
You too, Matt.